More than 500,000 people have landed in Europe so far this year, the biggest migration crisis of its kind since the aftermath of World War II. But there's been some controversy over the terminology used to describe these people. Should they be called refugees or migrants? And does it matter? The UN says both groups are present, so it's safe to call all of them migrants because each is migrating. But there's a big difference between refugees and economic migrants. It's critical in determining what happens to these people, and identifying and differentiating between the two has become a big challenge for the European Union. So, what is a refugee? The United Nations defines refugees as people fleeing armed conflict or persecution. Denial of asylum could have deadly consequences for these people. Syrians are a prime example. Countries deal with refugees through refugee protection and asylum measures set out in both national and international law. The United Nations 1951 Refugee Convention is the foundation of refugee protection. The Convention's fundamental principle is that refugees should not be expelled or returned to situations where their life and freedom would be under threat. On the other hand, an economic migrant is someone who moves to another country in search of a better life, not someone who's forced to do it. While refugees cannot safely return home, these migrants don't face that barrier to return. Under international agreements and national immigration laws, they can be deported to their countries of origin, as long as there is a bilateral agreement. Some countries, such as the Balkan countries, have EU-wide agreements. So can't the EU just process the two groups separately? Well, it's trying to, but there are challenges. One of them is determining whether those seeking refugee status and asylum can safely return home. The European Union doesn't have an agreed list of countries of origin it considers safe. For now, 13 EU countries, including France, Germany, and the UK, have their own lists of safe countries, and they vary widely. So, for example, Germany does not consider Kosovo safe, but Austria, Belgium, and the UK do. So a Kosovar is unlikely to be granted asylum in any of those countries. A bill is making its way through the German parliament, which, if passed, would declare Kosovo as safe. EU leaders are trying to draft a list to be used across the bloc, but that proposal has also raised questions. To be considered safe, among other criteria, a country must have no persecution and no armed conflict. Rights groups have criticized the inclusion of Turkey, where government forces and the Kurdistan Workers' Party have reignited a decades-long conflict, killing more than 100 people since July. Making matters even more complicated, there are reports of people assuming false identities to improve their chances of being granted refugee status. The EU has agreed to send task forces to help register and screen migrants in major EU entry points, such as Greece and Italy. Their hope is to quickly identify migrants eligible for refugee status and relocate them across Europe.